Thank you all for joining me today. I'm really happy to be here and excited about this presentation and the work that you're doing in your area, in the museum itself, in your classrooms. I just really appreciate your commitment to children and to families. So thank you so much for the work that you do. As well as having spent most of my time in Montessori education and in the Montessori world, I did spend several years at the beginning of my career in public education, both in middle school and high school. So I've been around and I've done a lot of things, so I really appreciate this. My name is Lorna McGrath. I work for the Montessori Foundation, and that's actually my email address down there below my names. I have my title slide here, and it's work or play. I wanted to say work or play because most people that have heard about Montessori think that we in Montessori don't ever play, that we always talk about the children's work and not about their play. So I wanted to give you a Montessori quote to start us off. She said, "The essence of independence is to be able to do something for oneself. Adults work to finish a task, but the child works in order to grow and is working to create the adult, the person that is to be. Such experience is not just play, it is work he must do in order to grow up." And I put that quote in there because for us, we don't think of what children do as play in the sense of always imaginative, always sometimes silly, sometimes loud, sometimes not very organized. We really think of what children are doing as their work in order to learn how to be and what to do as they grow up. So we do call it the children's work rather than play. And I'll tell you a story that I just heard about this weekend, actually. There were some observers in a Montessori classroom, and they weren't trained in Montessori. They'd had a really brief little introduction to what they should do when they went into the classroom to observe. And so they went in, and the first thing that one of the people did was they went right up to a child who was working and went right up and really, rather loudly said, "So, what are you playing with?" And the child, kind of looked up at the adult and she said, "I'm not playing." And she looked back down at her work. And so this person went over to the Montessori sort of guide that was there and said, "The child said she's not playing. What does she mean by that? She looks like she's playing." And the Montessorian said, "Well, she's working." So this person went and rather loudly, once again, went to another child and thought, "Okay, I got it now," and said to the child, "So, what are you working on?" And the child answered and said, "I'm working on building something or other." And she thought, "Oh, good. She got the answer, So she goes to a third child, a 3-year-old child, and the 3-year-old is really concentrating on this piece of paper that she has in front of her. And she goes to the 3-year-old and she says, "So, what are you working on?" And the little 3-year-old holds up the piece of paper and it says, "Silence." And then she turns it back around and she goes back to working on silence. Because one of the things that we teach children in Montessori is to make silence, to listen to your own inner voice, to concentrate and that sort of thing. But this lady was, "Oh, silence. Maybe I need to go back and sit down and work on some silence as well." We do think of what they're doing as their work to grow up. So let's go through that with the slides. One of the things that we first have to think about as the adults in a Montessori classroom is, how do we set up this classroom? This is a multi-age classroom. It has literally hundreds of activities on the shelves in the classroom. How do we figure that out? What do we put in there? How do we present that? I'm showing you this triangle because there is this dynamic interaction between the adult, the child, and the environment. To us, those are the three key pieces in a Montessori classroom. And so the first thing that the adult does is they create the learning environment for the children that will be in there. So as you can see at the bottom of the triangle, the arrow is going to the environment. And once that adult has created that learning environment for the child, then the adult links the child, and you see the arrow going up to the child, links the child to the activities in the classroom by giving lessons, by showing them how to use the things that are in the environment. And then after she or he has given the lesson, then the child is then linked to the environment through working with the lesson, exploring it, sometimes making mistakes. In Montessori, mistakes are looked at as a wonderful thing, because when we make a mistake, that's where we learn. They are manipulating the materials, they are doing the lessons as they remember them, as they saw them. And then the adult is standing back and observing. And that's an extremely important piece in a Montessori classroom, is that the adult does a lot of observing. And they do that observing because we believe that observation informs our practice. That through watching and observing the child and or children in our classrooms, we can learn what we need to do. If we, let's say, notice that a material is not being taken off the shelf for a long period of time, then we say to ourselves, okay, well, I wonder, am I not giving lessons on that material? Is that material not engaging to children? Have the children, or the majority of the children in the class, mastered that lesson and need something more, something new, something with a higher level of difficulty? So the adult's job is to connect the child to the environment and then stand back and see what's going right, what's maybe not working so well, what needs to be changed, and adjusting the environment to the child or children within that environment. So that's the very first thing that we do. I wanted to give you also some ideas about some of our basic premises that we have for having the activities that we have in the room, and how we go about helping the children to understand what to do and how to be in a Montessori classroom. So I've listed them here, and then we're going to go into each one of these a little more in depth as I talk. There are expectations. We have certain expectations for children and their behavior, and we let them know that as we begin the school year, or if they were going on a field trip, like to the museum or to a performance of some sort, we would let them know what the expectations are before they leave, of course, to go on that trip, as to what their behavior should be and how they should act. There's always some sense of order. There's always some order in a Montessori classroom. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. We want whatever the children, whatever their activities are, as much as possible, we want them to be engaging in meaningful work. And I'll talk a little bit about what I mean by meaningful work in just a minute. We also want to make sure that within activities that we isolate the difficulty. We want the activities to help the child to concentrate, to lengthen their attention spans. And then Creativity is actually a big piece of Montessori, which a lot of people don't think it is, because a lot of people have the idea that in Montessori, we give these very strict, very structured lessons, and the children cannot deviate from what we've shown them to do. If that has been your experience in a Montessori environment, if you've ever been in one or observed in one, then you may have a different idea after today, after we finish today. So let's go into a little bit more detail about how we do expectations with the children. In every Montessori classroom, there are ground rules. And I'm sure in many of your classrooms, there are ground rules. When the children are very young, in early childhood, the teachers basically tell them what the ground rules are. And the ground rules are very simple and very few, because the children are very young. As the children go into the elementary years, each year at the beginning of the year, they talk about what their classroom ground rules are, and they make up their own list as a group, as a community, as to what the ground rules are in the classroom. So one ground rule might be that we always put our work away when we're finished. We clean it up, we put it away, we get it ready for the next person. So that's a ground rule of a classroom. And they would write that down if they were in elementary. At the early childhood level, it's much more generalized than that. There will be in Montessori classrooms some list, and in younger classrooms, not a list, but you'll know there are ground rules because you'll see the children in action more or less doing the similar kinds of things, like rolling up their rugs and putting them away. That's kind of a ground rule in their classroom. The other way that we help the children learn what the expectations are is by our own modeling in the classroom, meaning the adults. If we say that you can only eat or drink in the snack area at the snack table, then that rule doesn't just apply to the children, it applies to the adults in the classroom as well. And so we're modeling that same behavior. If we say that we don't sit on tables, we sit on chairs but not on tables, then again, the teacher can't then just go over and sit on a table. They model the same things for the children that they want. If there's a conflict, the teacher models how to resolve that conflict peacefully. Expectations are also given through the lessons. That's part of the reason the teacher gives the children lessons on the materials, is because we're showing them how we expect to use that piece of material, that activity. What do we do in that activity? How do we clean that activity up? Where does it go on the shelf? Those are all expectations that we show them within the lessons that we give them for the activities. Another way that we help them to learn what the expectations are is something we call grace and courtesy. And I like to think of grace as how we move our bodies in a classroom or in a museum setting so that we are not bumping into people, so that we are not crashing into tables, so that we are able to move about with some control, with some purpose. So grace has to do with how we move within a space. And courtesy has to do with manners. How do we interact with each other respectfully? So those two things also help the children understand what the expectations are for movement within a space and for interacting with other people in a respectful way in the classroom community. And then finally, consistency. Consistency is such an important thing. When we have these expectations, we need to be consistent and follow through with encouraging and guiding children to meet those expectations. I always say that the greatest encourager of misbehavior is inconsistency. Because if we're inconsistent about some of these things, like sometimes you can sit on the table and sometimes you can't, then the child never quite knows I wonder, today, can I sit on the table? Or is today the day the teacher's going to say, no, you don't sit on tables, you sit on chairs? So we try very hard to be consistent with whatever expectations we have. And I guess one more thing about that I would add is that often the expectations that are not negotiable are about safety. So it's just never okay to hurt someone, either physically or with their words. And so that's just not negotiable. However, where a child sits in the classroom is a negotiable thing. It is a thing that you can figure out and you can decide for yourself, and you can talk about with other people and figure that all out. That's an important piece as well. So the second thing I put on that list of basics is order. When you look at a Montessori classroom, if you look at it closely, you'll see that there are 3 main areas in every Montessori classroom where there is order. And it is very logical, it's very sequential. And so I wanted to put these photos in here because the first big area where there's order is the overall classroom. So you see the picture in the middle that has the word sunshine on it. That's actually a classroom, and it's called the Sunshine Classroom. In this particular school, they named their rooms for different sort of natural kinds of things. So this is the Sunshine Room. It happens to be in Tokyo, Japan, by the way. And you can see that the whole classroom is very orderly. Now, obviously, there are no children in there working right at this moment. And so when you take a picture of a classroom before the children arrive, it looks a lot more orderly than it might if you went in the middle of the morning when they were had everything out and were working on it. But always in the beginning, always in the end, and in the middle, there is order within the entire classroom. Just to further explain that, there is an area that we call practical life. There is an area in the classroom that's called language. There's another area called math. There's an area called cultural studies, which includes geography, science, art, those kinds of things. There's an area in the classroom called sensorial. This is a young children's classroom, and we know that they learn through their senses. So those materials in that classroom would have to do with refining and their senses. In an elementary classroom, you wouldn't see so much of the sensorial materials. You wouldn't see so much of the practical life materials as you do in an early childhood classroom. Practical life means exactly what it says. It's learning how to do the everyday things that we do in life. So for an early childhood classroom, you'll see pouring and scooping and sweeping and things like that. In an elementary classroom, you're not going to see so much pouring and scooping. You'll still see care of the environment. You'll still see at the end of the morning work cycle, children cleaning up and doing different jobs, pushing in chairs, rolling up rugs, doing things. So it does change as the children grow older and have mastered certain skills, but still have things they need to learn in practical life or everyday living, if you want to call it that. So that's the main area of the classroom. It has certain areas within that you might call curriculum areas. And it's very much ordered that way. Within each of those areas that I just named, there will be shelving. And if you look at the bottom left photo, you can see just one shelf. We just took a picture of one shelf. You can't see what's on it, particularly what is in those little baskets, what activities are there. What matters is that you know that the materials that are put onto the shelves in each of the areas are ordered and they are sequential. And they start at the top left and they'll go across the shelf and then down to the middle shelf, down and over to the left again, and then across to the right, and then to the bottom shelf to the left and down to the right. The reason for that, they increase in difficulty. Stacked top left is the simplest activity on that shelf, and the bottom right is the most difficult activity on that shelf. It's ordered left to right and top to bottom because we live in America and most of us read English or a language that starts on the left, goes across to the right, and then goes down the page. Obviously, there are some languages within the United States, some groups of people who have a different language than English and may read in a different fashion. But the children very quickly learn there's an order, and they learn where those activities go on the shelf, and they put them back in the place where they go pretty much all the time. It's pretty amazing if they're put back by the obviously in the beginning, there are things out of place, but as the children learn, oh, I can always go to such and such a shelf and there'll be this kind of activity on there. Now, let me say one more thing about that. Activities are changed pretty regularly on the shelves, and it does depend on which area it is. The math area, not so much. We have specific math materials, and they're pretty much always the same materials in the same place on the shelf. On the other hand, if it's practical life or sensorial or geography, science, it may be an extension or a variation of, let's say, the first activity on the top left, because you want to bring interest back. If you left the same activity there all year long, you might not see it being used very often. So you want to bring new interest and new engagement, and so you vary it, or you make some kind of an extension of whatever skill that is that activity has. There's a process within each of the materials. That's what the teacher shows the child in the lesson. Again, in each of those baskets or on each of those trays, there is a sequence of how you go about doing your lesson. And again, it goes left to right. So always preparing them for reading, just on a subconscious level. And there's routine within these orderly environments. And then if you look at the boy on the bottom right, that's called the trinomial cube. It's kind of like a rubric cube, but it has a mathematical equation that goes with it. When they're very, very young, they just use it as sort of a puzzle to get those blocks of different sizes into the box in the right order. When they get older and into elementary, they will have already experienced that, but then they begin to put the mathematical formula to the concrete material that they've already been using and working with their hands and their minds to look at the patterns and so forth. This child has all these blocks out, and they're, in a bit of disarray. He's looking, there's some red ones and some blue ones and some yellow ones. If this child started to become frustrated with this work because he couldn't figure out what he should do, there's something that we call a control of error, because we want children to be independent and to think things through and problem solve. It's actually the cover of the box, and it's in front of the child, and you can see that there's a square, and there's a large red square in the middle, of a blue square and a yellow square, and then around it there's some wooden shapes. They can actually take those wooden blocks and put that onto the top, and that will help them to order the blocks so that they can fit back into the box that they came out of. That's an important piece. A teacher might also come over if they see that the child's getting frustrated and can't figure it out, and they might say, well, let's just get all of the yellow ones and put them in a row, and let's just get all the blue ones and put them in a row, and let's get the red ones. And what the teacher is trying to help the child do is make order out of chaos so that they begin to organize themselves and their thinking and their process. So we're helping give them ways to do that. Meaningful work. We want children to have activities that they can engage in, that they will feel that they are doing something real. So we tend not to give them play kitchens in a Montessori classroom. We tend to give them real items like these two little girls. They have real food. they're spreading probably peanut butter or regular butter or some variation of that, honey, I don't know, on those crackers. And you'll probably notice also that the girl that's spreading looks like she's probably a year or two older than the other little girl who's sitting there with her watching intently, because not only do teachers give lessons, but also children give lessons to other children in a Montessori classroom. And we can do that because we have multi-age classrooms. So the older children, you know, it's sort of like having extra teachers in the classroom because they've been there for 3 years or 2 years and they're in their third year. And so they can help with lessons. And it's not limited to that, by the way. If there's a child that's 4 years old, let's say, in a 3-year age grouping, which includes kindergarten, and a 4-year-old has a skill, they can give a lesson to a younger child. Usually a teacher would say, oh, you know, Joey, I know you've mastered the graham cracker lesson. Could you give that to so-and-so? And then they go off and they do that. It's kind of with the teacher's guidance that they give lessons, because we want, of course, we want the little one to learn it the correct way as much as possible. So we try to keep their lessons as real as possible rather than having pretend things. And that's part of Montessori's idea, is she felt, and we feel, because we've been doing it for 100 years, that a child needs their real base in reality before they can become creative and imaginative. In other words, their creativity and their imagination springs from reality. If you think about some of the things that children work with or see, they are things, let's take superheroes, for example. A young child who's never been exposed to television or going to a child's house who has some superhero models or whatever, they would probably not come up with those themselves. Those things come from an adult's imagination. Adults created superheroes. Adults create those toys that are in the image of superheroes. What little children, if you watch them, do is they, when they're at home or other places on the playground, is they play games about things that are real in their lives. So they play house, or they play school, or they play other kinds of things that they've seen in reality in their own life experience. And from those things come their creativity and their imagination. So that's an important piece to the Montessori idea and philosophy. Children also really want to do something that contributes to the rest of either their family or their classroom or the place where they are. Like this little girl, and I keep using her as an example, but she's right there, who's doing this cracker work. Many times that work, once she gets those spread with whatever she's spreading them with, she will actually take a tray around the classroom and she will go to someone who is working, and she'll quietly put her hand on their shoulder so she's not interrupting them in a disrespectful way. And she'll say, would you like to have a snack? Would you like to have a cracker? And then that child can take a cracker. They can say, yes, please, or no, thank you, or whatever they want to say. But now this child is actually doing something that actually contributes to her classroom. When they sweep the floor to clean up messes, it's to help their classroom. It contributes to the working of the community within the classroom. Children want to feel valuable. And man, this is a tough thing these days, because so much of what we do is done for us nowadays. Many people use a dryer to dry their clothes or use a dishwasher to wash their dishes. So children are kind of left out of the loop on doing valuable things. And I think as teachers, our role is to help them to feel valuable and like they contribute to the community at a very young age. And they're very capable of that if we think about what they can do. and they want to be able to make a difference in their own lives and in other people's lives. So we need to offer them things that will feel and really be valuable and contributory and that makes a difference. I'm going to talk about isolating the difficulty now. You see this little boy, he is building, and this is called the pink tower, which is a material in the Montessori classroom that just probably more people have heard about the pink tower than any other material in Montessori. But notice what he's doing. This is a tower that's meant to be built as a graduation of sizes. And it's designed to develop and refine the visual sense so that he can begin to discriminate between, there are 10 of these cubes, between the sizes of these cubes. And so start with the largest one on the bottom and build up to the smallest one. Either he looks pretty young to me, so either he hasn't quite gotten that concept yet that you start with the largest and build up, or it sort of falls over, or he's experimenting with it. Maybe he knows that, but maybe he thought he would experiment and see if he could do it a different way and if they would balance. But the skill here would be to be able to put them in order according to size and to build it from largest up to smallest. Am I going to go and correct this child in the middle of his work and his concentration? I'm going to watch and I'm going to see what he does, and I'm going to say to myself, do I need to give him another lesson? You know, has he kind of missed the idea of this work? Or is he really experimenting and just trying out some new things with these cubes? But it is only one skill. It is only trying to help him discriminate between the sizes and gradation. But once he's mastered one skill, then we can build on that skill. So there's another piece of material in the classroom that actually has the same dimensions as those cubes, except they are prisms, rectangular prisms. So they're longer, but they correlate to each of those. And so they can put those two pieces of material together and work with them and create different things with those. But we wouldn't, until the child's experimented with this one piece, we wouldn't just go ahead and show both of those pieces of material at the same time to a child with no experience with them. So we want to build on the skills that are learned. Isolate the difficulty so they can work on one thing at a time. Once they've mastered that skill, then add in another one that will help them with that. So if you've learned to pour and you're good at pouring, maybe the next lesson on the shelf is pouring into 2 containers, or pouring using a funnel. So you're going to keep upping the ante, keep challenging the child as they go along, but not all in one material when they don't have the beginning skill. So another one is concentration. And we talk a lot about executive functioning skills these days. And one of the things that is part of that is a person's ability to stay with a task, to not be distracted by everything that's going on around, to inhibit their impulses and keep with it. And so in Montessori, concentration is a really big piece. There's a man who a few years ago wrote a book called The Flow. His last name is Csikszentmihalyi. If you read that, he's a psychologist, I do believe. He talks a lot about humans getting into the flow. He calls it the flow. And the flow has to do with having interesting and challenging things to do. And when you have that, something that's interesting to you and challenging, it engages you in a way that you begin to become very involved with it. Your concentration is there with it, and you are in the flow. Our activities, in order to enhance concentration and attention span, need to be interesting. So the teacher needs to know the child. So know what to link the child to, what activity to link the child to, so that according to the child's interests as well as skill level. It needs to be challenging, so you need to know the skill level, and you need to be that activity hopefully is a little bit above their skill level so that they can be challenged, but you don't want it to be so much above their skill level that they become totally frustrated and, throw it across the room. Interesting and challenging, and also often involve some sense of creativity. So this little girl that's sitting here is actually doing a sewing lesson. She's got a spool of thread, a needle, and it's threaded, and she's got some kind of cloth there in her hand. This is interesting to her, definitely challenging. This looks like maybe a 4-year-old, and there's probably an element of creativity in it. If you look at the photo that's on the bottom left, that design is made from beads, and those beads actually come from a box that we call the multiplication box. It's really a math material, but for this particular child, and it has to do with multiplication, but this particular child got the multiplication box out, and rather than doing math problems, this child decided to look at patterns within those beads and came up with this design totally on his or her own. This was interesting to the child. And think about it, there's a lot of mathematical patterns within that a child could learn from that, knowing that is really a multiplication or a mathematical game rather than a lesson, rather than an art lesson. It's challenging, and there's a bit of creativity. Montessori believed that imagination and creativity are based in reality. And she also believed that the second plane of development, which is the elementary years, those children are so much into this whole, they have looked at so many things in reality and in concrete ways that they now can begin to become very creative with things. And so the two boys that are on the right, that thing that they have created is all with sensorial materials. Well, no, there's some math in there too. They have taken 8 different materials, 8 different activities, if you will, off the shelves and combined them and made this beautiful thing. And that is a real balancing act. Those red and blue rods that they have there are quite long, and they are balancing somehow, some way on top of the pink tower. The boy in the picture on the left, lots of drama and writing plays, writing skits, performing, all are inclusive in Montessori with the language part of our curriculum. And these children get up on stage and perform, and that takes confidence and courage. They are thinking outside of the box when they're creating props and costumes and all of those kinds of things. So creativity is definitely a part of it. We always try to lay the foundation first based in reality, and then we move on to creativity. We call that elementary years the amazing imagination years. And those of you, probably most of you do work with elementary age children, and you know they have great imaginations and they love to do things that involve the imagination. This is another quote from Montessori, and I wanted to end with this one, and then we'll go into the question and answer part of this. She said, "Does nature make a difference between work and play, or occupation and rest? Watch the unending activity of the flowing stream or the growing tree. See the breakers of the ocean, the unceasing movements of the earth, the planets, the sun, and the stars. All creation is life, movement, work." What about our hearts, our lungs, our bloodstream, which work continuously from birth till death? Have they asked for some rest? Not even during sleep are they inactive. What about our mind, which works without intermission while we are awake or asleep? And I just thought that that was kind of an appropriate thing and something interesting for us to think about as we think about work and play and about nature and how nature carries on. Obviously, in a class of 25 to 30 children, which is typical of a Montessori classroom, and there are usually 2 adults in a classroom of that size. There are times when a child will take an activity off the shelf that they're not ready for. However, because of the multi-age classroom and the way that it's set up, each year, ideally, a third of your classroom moves to the next level. So if it's a 1st to 3rd grade classroom, let's say, every year the 3rd graders move up to the next level, which is what we call upper elementary. So now you have a third of your spaces that are ready for the kindergartners to move into the 1st grade slot. So what happens is 2/3 of your class are returning children. So 2/3 of your class know that they need a lesson on a new material before they take it out. So in the beginning of the school year, you're giving lots and lots and lots of lessons to the young ones, to the new ones in your classroom. And if a child happens to take something out and I know that they haven't had a lesson on it and they're not right in the middle of it and concentrating, then I may go over and I may quietly, put my hand on their shoulder. They look at me, I go, oh, you know what? I would love to give you this lesson. So I'm going to help them with that. But if they've gotten it out and I haven't noticed that until they're already into working and exploring that material, whether they're exploring it the way I would present it or not, but if they're being careful, if they're concentrating, if they're engaged, then I'm going to observe and I'm going to watch that child and I'm going to see what they're doing with that material. And I'm going to make a note to myself, either a mental note or a note on my iPad or whatever however I make my notes in my classroom. And I'm going to say to myself, I see that she's very interested in that lesson. I'm going to give her another lesson or a lesson on that work, maybe later today, but I'm not going to interrupt a child who's concentrating and working with the material carefully just because I haven't given them the proper lesson yet. The biggest thing for us is there are 3 Ds, and you guys may have 3 Ds too. If a child is being dangerous, disruptive, or destructive, we intervene. So when you say they're being dramatic, they could be dramatic with dinosaurs, let's say, and not using them necessarily as a matching game or whatever I designed that material to be, but they could be using it in a dramatic way without being dangerous, without being disruptive. They could be quietly working on that and without being dangerous, destructive, disruptive, dangerous, okay? So I would not interrupt that child unless they were doing one of the 3 Ds. A lot of people really sometimes have concerns about that children are working alone too much. And that's okay, but what I would say is that human beings are wired to be social. That's just how we're wired. We like to be with other people for the most part. We have different personalities and different degrees of liking to be working with other people, but basically we're social creatures. So in Montessori, we don't feel like we need to artificially design ways for them to be social, but rather, and I'm talking, at the early childhood level, we need to design activities to help them increase their attention span and their concentration. it's more of a natural balance. Like, for example, they can get snack anytime they want during the morning work cycle. Morning work cycle is 2.5 to 3 hours. And when they have their snack, they have their snack with with one or two, depending on the size of the classroom and how the teachers have set up the snack. So usually it's, 2 or 3 children at a time will have snack together. In the elementary years, it could be 4 children have their snack at the same time. And that is a place where they go, they get their snack, they sit down together, they interact together. There are certain activities within the Montessori classroom, certain activities that are on the shelves that are designed for more than one person to work on at a time. And we invite children to work collaboratively together with those works. So we have some, what I call one-person works, and then we have works that are more designed for several children to work on together. So there is a lot of interaction, and because they're moving and choosing their own work for 3 hours in the morning, there is a lot of social interaction. Just by the nature of the classroom, people are not always just sitting there concentrating on work. They're getting up to get some more work. They see a friend, they say hi, or they walk by somebody who's doing some work that they are interested in looking at and observing. Obviously they have recess time. Many Montessori classrooms have outdoor space that's attached to the classroom. So they have freedom in that area to work in smaller groups on nature types of activities. But we don't plan it. We don't say, okay, this is one person work time and this time is some other kind of time. We do have group time pretty much every day. Some classes have group time twice a day. I think the best model is to only have it once a day, which is the full group, where they learn to sit in a group, raise their hand, listen to other people, share ideas, that kind of thing. What I have seen over my many, many years in Montessori, and not only in my own classroom, but as I changed roles and am doing other things, I've seen many, many Montessori classrooms around the country and actually around the world. And what I have found is that a huge part of Montessori is about looking for systems, because remember, I said everything has a process, it has a routine, it has an order to it. And so Montessori children are taught to look for systems, to find how something works. When they move into a different type of environment than Montessori, generally what they do, and this isn't always every single child, but generally what they do is they watch and they look at how the system works within that new place that they are. And for some children, that doesn't take them very long at all. For other children, it might take them longer to figure that out and to adjust to it. What I found also is the older a child is when they leave Montessori and go to a different type of system, actually the better they are at adjusting to the new system, to the new way of being in the classroom. And they tend to become leaders because they have a lot of confidence and they also have a lot of skills. It doesn't take very long. It doesn't take very long at all. Maybe 3 to 5 minutes at the most. You can see pretty easily and pretty quickly whether they're actually engaging and are concentrating and are working with that material in a way that they're going to get something out of it. They may not get the same thing that you intended for them to get, but they're going to get something out of it if they are engaged and if they are concentrating. At the very least, they're going to be concentrating, and isn't that a great thing? If they're not, if they're using the material in a way that is not productive, they're not really concentrating, or they're being one of those 3 Ds, you can see that pretty quickly too. So you're going to intervene then and say, seems like you might want to try a different activity. Let me show you this. And you always try to say to yourself, well, what is grabbing this child about this particular thing? They're not using it correctly, and I need to stop whatever behavior is showing up. But I want to also be able to direct them then to another activity. So an example of that might be, let's say a child is building with, do you remember the child that had the cube that was sort of like a Rubik's cube, and they had the little blocks, sort of, that boy was on the table? Do you remember that? If he starts, instead of trying to put them back in the proper way, if he just starts to build things with them, and it gets to be loud, or he starts building things and then handling it in a way that's disruptive or that might be destructive, I might go over to that child and I might say, looks like you're interested in building something. This material is not meant for building. This is meant for a different purpose. So let's put this away right now and let me show you the material that you can build with. So I'm going to try to redirect that child, and I'm going to try in my observation to see what is this child trying to do? Or sometimes you got to be real creative with that kind of thinking. Is I thought to myself, well, gosh, this is such a different environment. But I think one thing that keeps coming into my mind is that we try very hard not to put out so much material activities that children are overstimulated. In a lot of ways, we think less is better, but change it out from time to time. Put in a new activity. It may be the same skill, it may be the same, concept, but it's something new, but you don't put it all in there at once. It's sort of like a toy box. I tell parents, please, if you have a toy box at home, throw it away. Because what happens with a toy box is, yeah, it's a great place to open up the cover, throw everything in there, close the cover, and it looks all neat and tidy, right? The next time you open it up, though, the pieces to certain things aren't together. Like if you put a puzzle in a toy box, the puzzle pieces are going to fall out and you got to search for them. So that's one thing. You want to really make things very distinct, and it sounds like you do. Try changing things out more and not putting so much in there.